in charge told Daddy, said, you can't come in here at this city hospital. So he had to go out in the so he had to go out so he had to go out in the street and find a payphone. And he called Mr. Suggs. Mr. Suggs was a friend of Daddy's on the funeral home there. But and he was a Christian. He didn't belong to our church, but he belonged to Brother Hart's church. And he told him, he said, bring your ambulance to the Parker Hospital. I'm taking Ralph out of here and taking him home because we don't, we're going to lose him. So Brother Suggs got there, and when Daddy waited for the ambulance to come, they got caught out of the ambulance and went back to go in the hospital. The police had the door blocked. And the policeman in charge told Daddy, said, you can't come in here at this city hospital, this city property. You can. Daddy said, I'm coming in. Said, I'm going to get my boy and I'm taking him out of here. They said, you can't do it. Daddy said, Mr. Suggs, follow me. Daddy said, these policemen just started moving left and right. Just God moved. Well, God moved them. Mr. Suggs, Brother Suggs, and Daddy went down in the morgue, put Ralph on there, was coming back, and they started following him. You can't take him out. You can't take him out. You can't take him out. Daddy went out through the door, put him in the ambulance, said they already took him out. They brought him home. And Mama cleaned him all up, put him in the bed. He's just breathing, but naturally unconscious. And so by that time, all of the members of the church, they got the word sometime. So Daddy said there's a few people already gathered to pray for Ralph. Daddy said, now I don't want nobody to bother me. I'm going to pray until God brings him back to full life. Daddy went on the back side of the bed there, and he prayed rest that day, and the next day, and the next day. Ralph woke up and said, I'm hungry. And boy, I tell you, people, God shouting and praising God. And from then on, he was just absolutely just better every day. So after about 4 or 5 days, there was a knock on the door. Daddy said, I'll take it. And of course, there were still people coming, going. Daddy went to the door, and there stood a doctor and 2 policemen. And Daddy said, yes. He said, and the doctor said, we've come to find out how come you hadn't buried Ralph. And he said, bury him? He said, well, he's been dead now for numbers of days. Dad said, come in and I'll show you why I hadn't buried him. They come in, there stood Ralph in his right mind and everything. Doctor said, all I'd say, it had to be a miracle. And so they left. But they had already brought charges against Daddy, and he had to go to court before Judge Rawlings. And so it's a couple, 2 or 3 days after that, Daddy went to court there in Dallas. And the courtroom was packed and jammed with people. Of course, the newspaper, we've got newspaper clippers from all over the world. All over. Yeah, Ralph's case even appeared in Robert Ripley's Believe It or Not. And so Daddy went to court, and the judge had 2 boys that was in law school, and he had already told them, he said that he wanted that case against Daddy because he's going to prove that what he did was wrong, and that he's going to send him to prison. He told his boys that. So when it came in, Daddy was there in the courtroom, and they called the court in order, and he called Daddy up, and he asked Daddy, said, where's your lawyer? Daddy said, I got a spokesman, but you can't see him. The judge said, I don't want no smart remarks. Daddy said, I ain't giving you no smart remarks. He said, I'm going to ask you one more time, where's your lawyer? Daddy said, I'm going to tell you one more time, I don't have a lawyer. I don't need a lawyer. I got a spokesman. And the judge, he kind of paused for a little bit, and Daddy raised his hand. He said, yeah, He said, could I say something to you, Judge? Judge said, well, I guess so. He said, I want to ask you a question. He said, do you believe the Bible? He said, do I believe the Bible? Sure, I'm not an infidel. Daddy said, I was for 52 years. But he said, all I did is just trust God. And that's why Ralph is alive today and almost fully recovering. And he said, I just did what God told me to do. I trusted God. Some people in the courtroom began to praise God, and some began to cuss and this and that. And the judge began to pound on the desk, clear the court, because he's in an uproar. So the police ran him out, and Daddy's still standing there. And after it was, the court had been clearing out, the judge, while he was clearing them out, he went back to his chamber. And so, after they cleared them all out, Daddy's standing there wasn't nobody in the room. Daddy said, well, what am I supposed to do? And well, I guess I'm going home. He turned around to go, and he heard a voice said, Raymond Hart. Daddy stopped. He turned around and looked, and Judge Rollins was standing in the doorway of his chamber. He said, come here. Daddy walked in, and he said, come in here. Daddy walked in, and he said, sit down there, right there. So Daddy sat down. He said, you know what? And he told Daddy, he said, you know, I asked for this case. I would really want to send you to prison. And I told my two boys I was going to send you to prison. But he said, when you said that I had counsel but I couldn't see him, he said, you were sadly mistaken. I saw a man dressed in white apparel standing right by your side. And he said, I want to get saved. And Daddy prayed Judge Rollins. He got saved. He was saved till the day he died, you know. Mm-hmm. And from then on, I mean, tell you, boy, everybody in Dallas knew about the Hart family. But you know, the whole thing of it is, we thought, well, something like that will never happen again as long as he lived. Well, 2 days later, a lady run a red light and hit Billy Joe. And when they picked him up off the streets, they didn't know whether he was dead or alive. His scalp was laying in his face. His back was broken. All the fingers on one hand was broken. They rushed him to the hospital, and they said, well, he won't live, but they put his scalp back on and sewed his scalp on. And Mom and Daddy got there right after they got through sewing his scalp back on. And the same doctor that came to the house for Ralph was there, and he said, what are you going to do about this boy? Daddy said, well, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to trust God. And he said, well, this boy is 3 times worse than the other. Daddy said, God 3 times bigger than he was then. Daddy called Mr. Suggs. They come, picked him up, brought him home. They didn't give him all the hell that they gave him before. But they brought him home. And I tell you, it wasn't but just a couple of days. So Billy Joe was sitting up in bed in his right mind, eating just like nothing happened. Of course, his skull, they had sewed his skull back on, got healed his back problem and everything else. And after about a week or so, he went back to school. So the thing of it is, God knows how to do it. And you know what? I was traveling with Ralph, and I had to come home because I had to report to the draft board because I had turned 18. And I didn't know whether they would draft me or not. But when I came home, now I had a motorcycle. I rode a motorcycle. Well, I was riding my motorcycle, and this guy ran a red light and hit me. And when I gained consciousness, I was in the street. The ambulance was already there, and the doctor was there, and police and all kinds of people were there. And somebody, the doctor said to me, he said, son, what? I gained consciousness now. I had a clear mind. He said, what hospital do you want to go to? I said, I don't want to go to no hospital. He said, you got to go to hospital. You got internal injuries. We don't all know exactly how many. He said, you got to go to the hospital. I said, I don't want to go to the hospital. Somebody in the crowd said, take him home. His daddy will pray for him. He'll be all right. And you know what they did? They put me in the ambulance and took me home, 3310 Pine Street. Mom and Daddy wasn't even home. Took me in the house, laid me on the couch, and left me there. I was all by myself. And when Mom and Daddy came home, they found me laying there on the couch, you know. And never went to the doctor. Just prayed for me. And I guess I was down for about 3 days. And after about a week or so, of course, I limped a little bit and sore quite a bit, but went back to school and I was all right. And so the Hart family, I tell you, Daddy was feared in Dallas. He was feared in Dallas. You know, when Daddy died, now, Brother Hart had the largest full gospel Pentecostal church in Dallas. Brother Hibbert and Brother Hart was really Daddy's close friends. And I guess really all the churches in Dallas, young people, we had the biggest young people. We had a couple of hundred young people in our church. But when Daddy died, Brother Hart said to us, he said, now you know that they're going to come from all over the country around here to your daddy's funeral. And said, why don't you have the funeral in our church, because his church seated thousands, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people. And we said, well, okay. So at the funeral, we took Daddy to Brother Hart's church. Brother Hilbert preached Dad's funeral. He was also a pastor there in Dallas. And that church was packed and jammed. I mean, it was packed and jammed. And we didn't know this, but all the city officials, the mayor, the governor, Texas, they were all there, every one of them. And right before Brother Eby got ready to preach the sermon, this man raised his hand. And Brother Eby said, yes. He said, I'm the mayor of the city of Dallas. And he said, I'd like to say something about this man before you start your message. He said, okay, come on up. So the mayor went on up and he said, let me tell you people something. He said, this man's been fought by many people, but he said, this man has stood true. And he said, let me tell you something. All the officials, just about the state of Texas, is sitting in this congregation right now. And he said, I'm going to tell you these people something. This, and he pointed to Daddy, he said, this was the greatest man that God ever sent to Dallas, Texas. And I'm going to tell you, Daddy was feared and respected, you know. But I tell you, the whole thing of it is, people's got to live for God. If they don't live for God, God said he'd fight our battles. He'll fight our battles. And people that don't trust God, I don't know what they're going to do, you know. So that's some of the Hart family's tragedy we went through. But through it all, thousands of people got saved, you know. And thank God for that, you know. Mm-hmm. So God's still real.
Tell them about the time God raised that woman from the dead.
Good morning. It's a nice, moist, rainy morning. I remember about 7 years ago, sunset